All right, now, yesterday we got a reaction from Afreximbank to the downgrade given to them by Fitch ratings, and it's an important topic when you see where Africa is at this time, which is Africa is seeking to find its own feet and be independent of foreign loans, financial or non-financial. And we've seen Afreximbank, try to fill in that gap to be a financier of the continent's projects and reduce the dependence on international, multinational, multilateral financing agencies. And of course, as it would be expected, a lot of reactions following that. But we were waiting for Frexim to, have the first say and get that reaction, which is what we got yesterday. So let's follow up on that and find out what Professor Olabisi Akikube thinks about this. Professor Olabisi is joining us from Canada. He is the Purdy Crawford Chair in Business Law and Associate Professor at the Zulich School of Law at Dalhousie University in Canada. Prof, good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Ini. Good morning.
Yeah, so I'm sure you saw the reaction from Afrexim just trying to explain how they operate and denying the claim that they are part of a debt restructuring in countries like Ghana and all of that. And, what are your first thoughts concerning all of this, the Fitch downgrade and now the reaction from Afrexim?
Ini, thank you very much. The place to start with this is the fact that Afreximbank is one, if not the only institution that does it very boldly. It is one of the institutions of the African, that comprise of the African multilateral financial institutions that take seriously the task of lending to African sovereigns or African states loans that they need in really dire times, by which I mean contexts when most other international financial institutions, mainly international IFC and the World Bank, will not lend to them. One example of this is Zimbabwe. So for a while, there has been the background challenge that has been asserted by Afreximbank, which I believe is true, that by virtue of their establishing treaty, they are a multilateral financial institution that has its status as that of a preferred credit status. And so what that means essentially is that when default happens, by any of the sovereigns that they have extended loan facilities to, they will not be subject to haircut when that process of restructuring occurs. So you can then imagine with Ghana, Zambia, Malawi being in precarious situation with respect to their loan profile, it's not surprising that the conversation around restructuring has come up. Now, what is somewhat surprising, and I should say could be a very dangerous precedent, is that in the case of Ghana, about a year and a half ago, their former Minister of Finance came out publicly to say that they will not consider having a haircut or restructuring for the loans that has been provided to them by Afreximbank. And so 2 years later, or a year and a half later, coming to a week ago, to see a new government changing completely the tone from which they declared publicly is part of the background to this. And of course, the same has been repeated by Zambia. And so that doesn't make it entirely true that restructuring is already going on. Because as you will see, what Afreximbank has said, quite, in my view, also true, in their interpretation of the establishing treaty is that the Fitch ratings that sought to downgrade their rating and almost considering it at the risk of junk is that they misclassified their loan as a non-performing one. And they say that is not true in their own report. That's on the technical sense. Fitch Rating might say, look, we have a way by which we determine our own, and we have done so. But a crucial point at this stage is to note that Fitch Rating, like Moody's, like all the other ones that comprise of the three major credit rating agencies, have always missed the context in which African multilateral financial institutions operate. They look at them the way that others in the Western states operate.
Prof,
And
Prof,
so,
before you go to that line of conversation, so now Afrexim has come to clear the air to say, I mean, there was a wrong classification. What should happen now? I guess we should be waiting to hear from Fitch, either to say, oh, there was no misclassification, or we accept that there was a misclassification. What should come up next?
oh, well, coming out to say that we accept that there's misclassification may be going too far because this is the business that they do. And that will, again, further bring issues around the integrity of what Fitch Rating does. I think what is essential here, you've seen Afreximbank clearly state that they are not under any form of restructuring. And so it may look like at this time there's an impasse that is going on. What we don't know or won't see is that parties will surely be talking to each other. And not it's not impossible that Ghana or Zambia or any of the other countries, to be honest with you, come out to then indicate that they found a way to go forward with Afreximbank. They are the ones who have the loan to be paid, and they have to pay it. Fitch will argue they've done their job, and Afreximbank will continue to make their own point that they are not restructuring.
And this also points to the need for the Africa Credit Rating Agency. I know the conversation has started, and I hope, the normal African elements will not crop in, either to disrupt the implementation or sentiment around it.
You are right. The African Credit Rating Agency, which is, an institution that is being set up as an alternative, one that is, homegrown, autochthonous to the continent, as a good alternative to the big three, has been spearheaded by the African Union, the African Peer Review Mechanism. And as you have noted, a lot of work has been put in there. I do think there's every reason to be cautiously optimistic about the fact that the African Credit Rating Agency, when it is fully in force, will be able to do its work with transparency, integrity. But we hope that African states will back it with the necessary financial support as well, but also, just treat it seriously so that the task of, attaining not just an African legitimacy, but a global legitimacy will be one that will be achieved in no time from when it starts operating fully.
Yeah, so Prof, I met you. We were together at Abidjan for the AFDB, and this was part of the conversations there. And one of the sessions had the CEO of S&P Global, and of course he was asked what he thinks about the Africa Credit Rating Agency, and he said, "Oh, it's welcome. It will serve as a competition." But how do you see, let's say, that the Africa Credit Rating Agency works as we hope that it would? What kind of picture does it present to the world, to the issue of ratings? Is it a competition? Would it be complementary? Would investors say, oh, let me compare the Africa one and then the Western ones?
So a couple of ways to respond to that. Number one is that it is not just simply a competitor. It will be, if it functions the way we anticipate, an organization that accounts for proper context in the classification of loans that African states or sovereigns have. That means that it counters what has been perceived quite rightly as bias by the three major rating agencies up to now. And so to just simply say that it is a competitor, even when it is not yet in place, I think is defecting from the real issue. Number two, as you said, is to make it global. It is essential that African states take it seriously. It means that issues around its, administration, as I've said, its transparency, will become very critical to building integrity and legitimacy amongst those who would approach them and the work they've been putting out. and up to date in terms of how they've been stepping out in responses. I think there's a lot that is there in terms of the quality of work that has been thought through about this. Now, we look at African regional organization schemes and how they have worked up to now, one might say there's every reason to be very careful about whether this will be a reality. But the fact that African states have lived in a world that up to now has entirely depended on credit rating agencies that are outside of the continent speaks to the severity, to the importance of the African credit rating agency. And I hope everyone who cares about the cause of Africa will be hoping that this goes right, but will also be doing what is essential to support the work of the African Credit Rating Agency when it comes to full operation.
All right, Prof, thank you so much for that. Of course, this is a continuous conversation. And I mean, I do hope that Africans will come together, and speak in one voice and take away the sentiment around the rating and the rating agency. Thank you so much, Professor Olabisi Akugubedi, Purdy Crawford Chair in Business Law and Associate Professor at School of Law at Dalhousie. Thank you so much for your time and your views on the program.
Thank you very much. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too.